Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on TLBTV. Today we have a guest, and I don't even know if I can call him a guest because he's basically a member of the TLB family and has been for a very long time. And most of you are very aware of this individual. Before we get to that, I want to preface this show. What you're about to hear is an excerpt from an article that I wrote and published today. So let's get through this real quick, and then we will bring our guest in. So here we go. When truth is the enemy of those we elect to represent us, when truth is ignored for profit or gains, when truth is subverted for political conquest or agenda, then one could easily consider that we are discussing a two-bit banana republic or a dictatorship, and not the globally dominant Western world, supposedly built on a solid foundation of democratic principles and honesty. Western world mainstream media once considered the voice of the people an unwavering harbinger of truth and the protector of our freedoms and liberty. In the United States, we used to call that the fourth branch, is now looked upon as the mouthpiece of a global elitist caste who places very little weight on our desires or our requirements, instead hell-bent on aiding in the institution of a global governance that would strip us of all our freedoms and liberties that we have for far too long taken for granted. If we just consider America today, okay, those who are aware can easily observe the FBI leadership is corrupt and politicized against a sitting president. The DOJ leadership is corrupt and politicized against a sitting president. The NSA is corrupt and politicized against a sitting president. A majority of Congress is corrupt and politicized against a sitting president. A large portion of our federal court system is corrupt and politicized against a sitting president. And we've all seen incidents of this recurring over and over again for the last year plus. Yet, if you are an aficionado of mainstream media, you are all but ignorant of these facts or aware of only the lies perpetrated to dispel or bury these very facts. So in fact, it is not we the people who rule, but those who present this propaganda lies for their tyrannical agenda. The days of truth in politics has now become an historical discussion in our faded past, or the faded past of global politics. And said truth is resigned to the scrap heap of things that just could not survive the ambitions and greed of those who would play God with humanity. Today, we live in a world run by liars who, even when caught red-handed, pay little to no penalty or suffer no loss. This is not a guess, my friends, and we all know this. But the saddest part of all of this, just how many of the unwashed masses are oblivious to most or any of this, or are afraid to make their voices heard. And then there are always those that truly don't wish to know. And with that, I would also like to introduce my phenomenal co-host, who is a vital part of this show every week, and that, of course, is Rebecca Mahan, who is the Liberty Beacon Project media director and has her own show called Rebecca Sounds Reveille. I strongly suggest that you take a little time and watch some of her shows. How are you today, Rebecca?
I'm doing fantastic, and Aside from how I'm doing personally, I've got to tell you, it's really disappointing to hear the commentary that you just shared, because it's just disappointing. All the way around, we think that we have such a stable based system, and that the checks and balances that we had at one time are no longer there and are eroding at a very quick pace in all arenas. And we have no trust in media. We have no trust in what's going on with television. You have a house of cards, and there is a pun intended in there, with all of the things that are going on with the Me Too movement, sexual harassment, so on and so forth. And then where you really should have the foundation and the core of everything that strengthens and binds the United States is in our judicial system. And we are seeing some of the most horrific things happening, from criminals that are being released early because we don't have enough room to populate them, or to maintain the population of them, or even just to afford all of the things that are going on in the criminal element of the world. And so we're reducing crimes from felonies to misdemeanors down to infractions. And then when you go up the chain, where there's supposed to be the core, because everything is supposed to roll downhill, right? It is in utter chaos right now. And I think for those who are not following or have chosen not to follow what is going on, they really need to become aware and alerted to really the most significant thing, whether it's in a business model, on a relationship level, or what's going on in my community or country. That's what's in it for me.
Agreed. So agreed. And I think it's time to bring in, and again, I use the word guest, but in fact, he is a part of the family. And this is, of course, is the purveyor of his own media channel. And that is OffPlanet Media, which includes OffPlanet TV and OffPlanet Radio. And that is Randy Maugans. How are you today, Randy?
Oh, there we go. Forgot to unmute the mic. Hi. Hi, how you
Welcome.
doing? Good to see you both. Rebecca, I see you've got your window view of the TLB towers there. That's awesome.
Yes, of course.
Roger, of course, is in the cave, so, or the bunker.
They're really, really harassing me to change that. And I'm one that takes change very slowly. But
A little lighting wouldn't.
yeah, I know.
But the mystique is there. Anyway.
Look, you heard my a portion of the article I published today.
Mhm.
All of the points I made: corrupt DOJ, corrupt FBI, okay, corrupt court system, and I could go on and on. Congress today is more bought and paid for than anybody, unless it's individuals like the three of us on this show even has a clue to. So we are looking at a country that is in the midst of what most would say is a deep state coup. Everything that Trump does, and believe me, I'm no huge fan of Trump, although I do support a lot of the issues that he's addressing and a lot of the policies that he's putting forth. But he is a duly elected by us, we the people, president. I have never seen a president in the history of my 63 years, and I've been around for 15 presidents. I have never seen this happen. And maybe little things here and there, like, you know, with Nixon, so on and so forth. But today it all culminates in a massive bureaucracy that is doing everything they can to tear America to the ground. And I would love to hear your opening statement, Randy.
I don't even know where to begin. I heard Rebecca mention checks and balances, and the only thing I can think of is that the checks are in the mail and the balances got melted down somewhere in the process.
Well, and Randy, with that, you have to look in the unclaimed fund, because who knows where those checks have been going. And, you know, not everybody's getting the return on some of the funds that they've invested anyway. But I'm with Roger. I really would like to hear your take on this, because I think from the no confidence that we have on this level as a nation, and it doesn't matter what party you're on the upscale of it, And then on the lower scale, when we're just letting everybody go, what's the truth in having solidity, and not only that, but ensuring that justice is served in any aspect, from the top to the bottom, anywhere? How do we know this?
Well, first off, we have to define what justice means at the level of government that we're dealing with. There's no mandates, there's no embrace of any three-letter agency in the organic constitution that the country was originally founded in. We're not living in a constitutional republic. We have not been living in a constitutional republic, by my reckoning anyway, for over 150 years.
1871, the Act of 1871. Yes.
The formation, the DC Organic Act. So in a sense, after the Civil War and what was called Reconstruction, which is a broader term than I think most people understand historically, we saw the reconstitution of the government with the passage of the 14th Amendment, which was basically a codicil not attached to the Constitution. The Constitution was attached to the 14th Amendment when you read it carefully. All of these things came into play in a way to create the appearance of a federal jurisdiction over lands to which they were never entitled to have power over. And I'm talking about the states. So when the Department of Justice acts against certain officials inside of the government, inside of the 10 square mile Washington, D.C. radius, they're acting in what you would call their legal aspects pretty much on target, because they're basically acting as a private judiciary to a corporate government. And when you begin to reframe things that way, then you can understand that what's really void here is the jurisdiction of the states over their own matters, including elections and how elections are conducted. That was never supposed to be presided over by a federal election commission or any other federally mandated commission. So somewhere in there, in all of that, we begin to define the aspects of what legal aspects apply to whom. Mm-hmm. And in the case of what's going on now, specifically with the FBI has been corrupt for decades. It has occasionally risen above its political purview in certain ways, but the FBI is problematic because it operates under the Justice Department, which really, again, is not constitutional and therefore is part of the private corporation's own executive board.
And let me stop you right there, because you mentioned a word, and I'm going to kind of roll with it here, and that was the word void. And here we're having such upheaval because we have a president who wants to drain the swamp or flush it. The void.
The void, yeah.
Well, okay. Let's take this one step further, and let's refine it down a little bit narrower, because you just gave the opening statement I fully expected you to give, Randy, and you laid the basic groundwork. Great, absolutely phenomenal. Let's refocus on what we're looking at today, because Rebecca made another sterling point. We have no confidence in the FBI. We have no confidence in the NSA. We have no confidence in the DOJ or the Department of Justice. Mm-hmm. We have no confidence in Congress, whether it's the majority party or the minority party. We have no confidence in our government. We have seen... Go ahead.
Let me jump in real quick right there, because there's a huge misconception for some, because a lot of people don't want to really take ownership of not having confidence, because they feel maybe they will be labeled as anti-government or against the United States, when in fact that is not the case at all. It is that they are completely against the illegal activities, the fraud, the deception, and the things that are going on in-house that are not supposed to be there.
Well, if I had a nickel, and if Randy had a nickel, okay? Because we've been doing this for a long time. For every time somebody called us anti-American or un-American for the things that we state, we'd be very rich. We would. As we look at all of the things that are happening around us, the biggest thing that slaps you right in the face is that we no longer have any power in this country. Our elections are stolen. Okay, we have proven that over and over again. And there's a new report that just came out that said there could be as many as 11 to 14 million illegal votes in the 2016 presidential election, which means that Trump not only won the electoral vote, but he also won by a huge margin the popular vote. So now we're sitting here. We no longer have faith or trust in our system of election or our system of governance. Now, I got to explain something to you. What's the name of this show? It's Eradicating Programmed Ignorance. We have the word sheeple, which I hate, but it is a descriptive term that many understand. What you just described, Rebecca, is the sheeple. Okay, these are the people who fear that if they push too hard against a corrupt government, they will in fact themselves carry a label. And this is predominant through a majority of our society today. But Randy, what I'd like you to address next is you see what's going on. You see what's going on with Sessions, with Comey. You see what's going on with Strizek. You see what's going on with Page. You see what's going on with, and I could go on and on, all the way down to Obama, because a lot of this now is being hooked straight to Obama's ass. It really is. Okay? So now we're looking at a system that is no longer trusted by we the people, yet we are not given the power by these corrupt individuals to affect the changes we need. This is where Trump steps in. He's going to drain the swamp. I got to explain something to you. I am totally amazed this guy is still alive, but he's got more balls than just about anybody I know who sat in the White House in a very, very long time. So what is now give us your perspective on what we are seeing now.
I don't know what we're seeing now, because we have a media proliferation of such degree that things are put. I'll give you a good example. The famous alleged Trump statement about shithole countries. And that raged for 3 days before finally was established that, in fact, he never said that inside of that private meeting that was leaked out and then echoed through the media to again discredit Trump.
Well, and can I jump in right there? Because I've had a thought about this statement since I first heard it. And that is, if you love your country to the degree that we should as Americans, isn't every other country, in our opinion, that?
No, shouldn't be.
Well, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we're holding ourselves as, we're American, and we have such, pride in America.
May actually be the problem. And it would not be a problem, first off, if our pride was centered on love of land, love of the things that derive from a very healthy relationship between the governed and the governing bodies. But what we have now is a malignancy in the system. And it's been there for so long, and it's rooted so deep. When we talk about the will of the people, I have to ask, where would you find the will of the people? Because the people, look at the divisiveness between the Republicans, the Democrats, red states, white states, blacks versus white, shithole countries versus superpowers. We have a schizophrenic mindset about not only the rest of the world and our own country, but even ourselves, because we really don't know who or what we are in relationship to this government entity.
It makes a lot of sense.
Well, and again, one of the reasons why I absolutely, and the audience seems to absolutely love having you on this show, is because you do bring up these points, Randy, okay? Let's take a look at what you just said. What is our standing in the world, all right? When I was born, when you were born, Randy, because we're pretty close to the same age, okay? When we came into this world, this was the shining castle on the hill. This is where everybody in the world wanted to be. I spent 30 years traveling around this world, okay? This is what I did for a living. And when I went into a country, the first thing they asked me are, you an American? And yes, I am. And I got special treatment. The last few years, I saw that start to change. And this is right around the year 2000, right at the turn of the century. And when I went to places like Ireland or Scotland or Italy, and people heard me talk and they knew I was an American right from the get-go, okay? The way I got treated changed. So when you talk about what is our standing in the world is shifting, and it's not shifting for the best. Trump says, we're going to make America great again. If you listen to what he just did in Davos, he's explained to the world that America is coming back. Our economy is coming back. The promises we make to the world, our leadership, they're coming back. This is why we put this guy into office. We knew that Hillary Clinton was corrupt. Anybody who wasn't an idiot, and there were a lot of them, a lot of these idiots, okay, knew that the system was so corrupt, that the system was so bankrupted, okay, morally and ethically, that change had to be made. So we don't know our standing in the world. We don't know our standing as citizens of what's supposed to be a constitutional republic. We don't know our standing in the eyes of the law. We don't know our standing financially, although that is getting better, but there's a bubble that I think we're going to run into in the very near future that may just take that down a few notches.
Like this year.
Yeah. So what we're looking at this point is a society that is either so ignorant of the facts, and these are the sheeple, that they believe anything the mainstream media tells them, or individuals like you, Rebecca, and myself that actually have a real good idea of what's going on and are so disappointed and so desperate for change. So we're looking at two ends of the spectrum. Those who don't care and those who all they do is care. There's no middle ground in America anymore. It's gone. When you and I were born, Randy, everything was middle ground. A vast majority of this country was middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
We had prosperity.
That's very true.
We had respect. We had a government that listened to us. We even had a press that reported on a president when he screwed up, truly screwed up, and a Congress when they screwed up, truly screwed up, and they told the truth and they held our leaders accountable. We have a system right now where we've got officials that if you or I or Rebecca committed even 1/1000th of the crimes they've committed, would be locked away for so long we would never see our families again unless they came to the prison on visiting days. Yet we have people who have broken massive laws within the government that are absolutely or appear to be absolutely bulletproof. Your opinion, Randy?
So okay.
That's good enough.
We might as well just go here. If you wanna get rid of the abscess, you have to go to the point of infection. The point of infection is Congress, and it has been Congress since the 1890s, but certainly beginning in 1913 when Congress abdicated their rightful lawful obligation to issue the money in this country, when they sold us out to foreign international banking powers and created the Federal Reserve and began to use fiat currency and move us towards where we got to in 1974 when we removed the benchmark of gold from our currency and we went to a hyperinflated, oil-based, war-based economy. Congress did that. Every member that has sat in the chambers of Congress for a century is a criminal. And they're still criminals now, and I don't care if they're Republican or they're Democrat. The fact that they sit in those chambers and they allow what happens inside of it to continue makes them co-conspirators in the destruction of this country.
But it gives them money to get reelected.
Sorry, I doubt that I had to get out of my system.
Well, that's perfect, because that's why you're on this show, my friend. The three biggest tyrannies ever committed against the American people in the history of the United States. the Act of 1871, okay, the Income Tax Act of 1913, and taking us off the gold standard in the Nixon era. Those are the three biggest tyrannies ever committed against the American people, and each built on the other. And what we inevitably ended up with, what we live in today, is a corporate governance that does not, okay, put us at the front of the line. It puts profit and power at the front of the line. And these congressmen and these senators really, if they want to go back to Congress session after session after session, they must kowtow down. They really don't have a choice, okay? Let's bring Israel into this. The first congressman or the first senator that doesn't go to the Wailing Wall or doesn't praise Israel or doesn't back Israel will never get elected again. You are looking at a foreign power that exercises more power over Congress and our politics than the American people do. And that's a country that's smaller than the state of New Jersey. Where am I wrong here, Randy?
Well, yeah, obviously the Israeli presence in the United States is a huge issue. And I have to say this, I'm looking at the Trump administration. That's a very pro-Israel administration right now. Having said that, I will allow for the fact that it appears as though Trump himself, at least, has acted fairly moderate in response to the Palestinian issue. There's hope there for a two-state solution. I don't see the uber Zionist in him, but I do have concerns about the fact that the Israeli influence has heightened since the Obama administration. And I'll say this in all fairness. Both Presidents Clinton and Obama distanced themselves from the Zionist state of Israel. Obama did not deal with them, to his credit. For whatever reason, there was a tip there. And that's credit where credit's due. So the Israeli influence through IPAC and all of these other groups that have the Southern Poverty Law Center, wherever you want to go, have unduly, influenced the course of our country as well, in terms of the amount of money that is being shipped out of the country and the amount of that money that's funneled back into the pockets of, the members of Congress again, through the influence peddling of these PACs that represent Israel.
I would take this one step further, and no, I'm going to go off the Israel thing because I think we've made our point there. We look at Trump, and individuals like you and I, we say, okay, yep, that's good for America. Yep, that's good for America. Oh my God, you know what? He's kowtowing on this particular item to the corporatist interest. We need to understand that being president of the United States is not a dictatorial position, okay? No. He must, in fact, compromise every single day he's in office. It cannot be my way or the highway, because you have the Congress, you have the judicial system, you have we the people, okay? So it has to be. So for anybody to think that Trump is going to go into office and everything he does is going to make us all smile is a moron, okay? This guy has to compromise in order to get done what needs to be done. I think that's
a really, really strong point, Roger, because that is something that's often overlooked. When we see certain things that are not going our way, it's for those that have elected him, we forget. It's just like when you become employed and you want to promote, and you know that the supervisor has certain things that the team has to do and certain repercussions, and I mean, there's a whole structure in place.
Yep.
Yes, and you don't understand why your supervisor has done what they've done until you become a supervisor yourself. And so if we can look at it in those terms, this is obviously a larger scale, but we really need to think about that, because we can't have everything one way, and that's what makes the United States great, is that we do have differences and different perspectives that can allow us to move into a way that is such a great nation. We're just in a position right now where it is so much deeply involved with chaos in every spectrum of wherever we turn, that it makes it very, very difficult when you're sitting back going, I want change, and one particular issue you might be hot on and somebody else isn't, and it doesn't go your way or the way that you think that the president should.
Or it doesn't happen like that.
Yes.
Okay.
And not only that,
yeah.
but some of the decisions that are made that don't appear initially to be the strong change are what lays the foundation for not only the strong change that comes, but a permanent change that is extremely healthy and positive. And so sometimes the initial, situation, we don't understand because we wanted that. And we live in the drive-through society, the ATM society. We want it now.
Instant
we don't understand.
gratification.
So, yes.
So, all right, Randy, I want to take this again back to what we're looking at today. And I know for a fact that every one of these things we discuss, we're going to have offshoots of these points. So I'm going to keep steering it back for the very, very simple reason. We're looking at the most chaotic state of government that you and I have seen in literally 3 generations, all right? The lack of trust, okay? No matter what happens, this memo, all right, this Nunes memo that is going to be released, okay? What does the Democratic Party do? They immediately know, because the Democrats have literally ruled the United States for the last 8 years and have developed what we term the deep state. We look at this and we try to understand, okay, how the hell do we get out of this? How do we move away from this? And what most people don't seem to understand is we're talking about a task that is almost insurmountable. You made a very valid point, Randy. You said this has been growing within the governance for generations. It literally has. Yeah. Okay? It has been growing and festering, and now it has come to a head. Eventually, everything that is on this level will become visible. So now we've got Nunes saying he's going to put this memo out. The people need to see this. The Democrats know that it is going to fatally wound them, especially in the upcoming election cycle. So what did they decide to do? They're going to put out a counter memo. But their counter memo is not based on any of the facts that Nunes was privy to write his memo. So basically what they're going to say in their memo is everything the Republicans are saying is a lie. It's a sham. It's meant to deceive you. It's meant to distract you. So now what we have, again, is the mainstream media who is going to hang on every word that the counter memo says. And the Nunes memo, which is full of absolute facts, okay, is going to be forced off into the shadows of mainstream media, and it's going to be left up to the likes of the Liberty Beacon Project and OffPlanet Media to bring these facts to light. When did you think, when you were young and you were so proud to be an American, when did you think that it would be up to people like you and I to save America? Because that's the frickin' point we're at right now.
Well, I don't know where memos have any bearing on this at all. You want to give me something of substance, give it to me in the form of sworn affidavit.
Well, the memo will relate to, that's what Nunes memo will do. It will relate to all of the proof. Okay, because you can't just put out that Clinton did this and Strzok did this and Comey did this. There has to be fact base behind it. This is why the memo was classified.
Isn't that what a grand jury's for, though?
Yeah, but again, Congress has the right to put information out to the public. And I do believe that we do need to see this memo. I do believe it is critical. What I can't understand is why it will get shoved into the shadows by the counter memo, which has no basis in fact whatsoever.
Because it's a media war. It's a perceptual war. It has nothing to do with facts in evidence. It
Programmed
has everything to do with perception management. And Donald Trump understands that. And I'll say this. What is being fronted in the media circus to a large degree is being orchestrated inside of the Trump administration, including a fair amount of counterinsurgency right now. And that is deliberately done to create the smokescreen for them to operate in the background. This is a game of
Agreed.
Look here, don't look here.
Well, here's something I started saying this about a year ago, and I find myself saying it more and more. Again, I'm not a Trump butt buddy. I don't kiss his butt. I really don't, and I never will. And I will hold him accountable, and so with this project when we need to. But what I'm fond of saying now is everybody says Trump doesn't play the game. And my reply to that is Trump doesn't play the game. Trump makes the game. We've never had a president like that before.
No, not in this style. You had a president in the 80s named Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
Very similar parallels.
Yes.
Both men media savvy, both men capable of articulating in different ways the vision that they put forward. And both of them, by the way, if you go back and look at press clippings from the 1980s, vehemently opposed by the left and put under incredible scrutiny on every level. A level, by the way, of accountability, which none of these cowards in the press, the Congress, the Justice Department, or anywhere else places themselves under.
Well, Rebecca, what do you think of that? Do you think that our leaders are actually, or they even feel that they're accountable to the people?
I can't even say that because there's a word in this show alone, and that's programmed. And some of the things that, or positions, I think that is sort of programmed that certain behaviors come out and schools of thought. So I think it's much deeper. I wouldn't even be able to begin to speculate what's going through their minds. I can just see what's happening, and I know the effect that it's having on the local communities, on the counties, the states, and what's happening to us as a nation. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
it's a rough one.
Let's talk a little bit about that, okay? And Randy, I know that I won't use the word triggered, but I know that this will absolutely bring some things out in your mind. Let's talk about going on college campus. Let's talk about a place that used to be a place to learn. Let's talk about an institution that used to produce the leaders, either corporate or political, for this country. And let's really look today, okay? If you have someone like Milo or any true conservative that wishes Steve Bannon wishes to go onto a college campus today to make a speech, everything is done by a massive amount of bleeding liberals, SJWs, to do everything they can to stifle their freedom of speech. Absolutely shut them down. As a matter of fact, most campuses will literally back off and cancel their engagements. Now, let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the fact that these SJWs, these progressive liberals, these new generation of leaders who are in college today, or corporate leaders in college today, they claim that they believe in freedom of speech. As long as you say what they want to hear. If you're not saying what they want to hear, they have zero tolerance for you. Zero. We are looking at a schism, a chasm being formed in the American society today. It is either the liberals or the conservatives. The liberals hate the conservatives tolerate, okay, they're not quite as vicious about it, tolerate, but really don't want to deal with the crybaby liberals. So we're looking at a schism that is expanding at an exponential rate. Are we looking at a soon to be, meaning over the next couple of years or over the next decade, are we looking at the next American Revolution?
No, I don't, that's not gonna. It's not gonna happen that way. No, there isn't enough will. There's no vision. There's no intestinal fortitude. There's no backbone for that type of action.
Yes. Go ahead.
And, let's also look at the education system as a whole, because I don't think the issue with freedom of speech is really isolated on college campuses. If you go to the elementary level, you're looking at Common Core. You're also looking at, you can't even take your Bible to school.
No, that's the nanny state right there.
So when you're talking about your freedoms, it's not isolated. It's in the entire educational system, with a few exceptions that you'll find probably in very small towns that generally go by what that local population is common to. What's the and that's really how our laws initially started.
You brought this, Rebecca. You brought this up twice now, so let's touch on this community-based, because that's really where government was supposed to operate at its best.
Yes,
in its smallest manageable unit.
Grassroots.
And what we lost was through the 60s, when we got into federal block grants and we got into entitlement programs and the implementation of the welfare state, local authority eroded by leaps and bounds over a decade, where the federal government had the ability to come in and set up camp and begin dictating the terms under which these local governments were going to operate, because they accepted the largesse of the state.
Yes, and they're usurping county sheriffs.
And beyond that, but let me stick a pin in the eye of this just a little bit further and just twist it around a little bit. Okay, we talk about the system of education. If we have any mechanism in this country today that is supposed to prepare our children for acceptance into society, okay, for acceptance into the political system, for acceptance into the corporate system, it is our system of education. That was originally a local issue, and then it became a state issue. And then it became a federal issue because, again, of these block grants, this huge amount of money. The government says, well, we're going to give the state of Rhode Island $35 million this year to help with their education. But here's the strings that are attached. Now, if it only went that far, I would say this is something we could countermand. But it goes further than that, because you brought up a point, Rebecca, that you know how much this sticks in my craw. Now we have what's called Common Core. The average citizens across this country abhor Common Core. They don't want it. They don't want their children taught in this fashion. They literally go to Board of Education meetings or so on and so forth on a constant basis and rail against this, and nothing happens. But why doesn't it happen? Why can't you put political pressure on your local councilman, on your local whatever, the town, the state, so on and so forth, to make changes? Well, let me explain something to everybody out there. Common Core is not a government system. It is a corporate system set up by the likes of Bill Gates. It is funded by the likes of Bill Gates and his corporate buddies like George Soros. It is developed and designed not by educators, but by corporate oligarchs. Who controls our lawmakers? The same corporate oligarchs. Do they want your children growing up truly understanding what America is supposed to be and acting in accordance? Or do they, let me go back to a quote, okay? A quote, and I believe it was Henry Ford. I know it was in the early 1920s. I don't want workers that think. I want workers that work well. And he was one of the original people that funded local boards of education. Why? To get his corporate concept across. Today it has exploded into Common Core. It is a corporate system, not a political or a government system.
Right. And what you were saying, though, is how that foundation is supposed to be there to give them the tools to go out in society and make it fantastic in a nutshell. But really, if you look at it, these changes that have been implemented are justifying the chaos that's already out there so that it can continue. That's not okay.
It's perpetuating. Randy, what do you think?
The
tell us everything.
well, the educational aspect of this is community, but see, we gave that up too, and we have to begin taking responsibility for the power we give up individually and collectively.
Yes.
If you want a revolution, it's a revolution of thought, and it's a revolution of responsibility.
So a one line, and then pick up again, a one line phrase. Okay, we suffer all we have allowed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Please continue.
So the educational system is not about developing thinking people who can work with their minds, work with their hands. It is about cookie cutter subservience to a state, which Bill Gates is a part of. Because the corporate, if anybody had an interest in a well-educated populace, I would have thought it would have been the founder of Microsoft. Given that they keep telling us every year they have to bring in another 10,000 workers from India to do programming and IT because of the fact that in America we apparently don't produce enough people anymore with even basic fundamental skills in computers. So, well, how are they going to do that when 2 + 2 can equal 5? I mean...
Well, and you know, just to really support the point in it being a corporate system, you're talking about, and let's just look at the epidemic of flu right now. You have students that should not be in school, but the school system is encouraging them to be there because they're not going to get a state percentage, a dollar amount that's given, mandated per student per day of attendance. So if a child is absent, they're not going to get those funds.
Well, they just need to get their vaccines. That's the problem.
Oh, don't even go there. That's another one.
So I mean, that just really validates the point when it comes back to
it is
money.
a corporatocracy, but we're dealing with fascism that's been deeply ingrained into the system, and it's not one thing, because there's a socialist communist aspect to all of this that meshes into the new corporatocracy, because the new corporatocracy is not driven by the ideals of the original industrial revolution in terms of how it operates. It itself is actually an authoritarian structure that's designed to crush the individual, stick them in a cubicle, make them a functioning machine, and out of that rabble, a couple will rise to the top. Well, no, they don't even rise anymore. They're just selected. It's called getting an MBA. So our system no longer incubates talent. It incubates subservience and rote thought and dull routine in favor of creativity and then in favor of innovation.
Way back when, Randy, they called that diploma mills.
Look, we're coming close to the end of the show here, and I want you to give one final thought, Randy, and I'm going to steer us back to where we started all this, okay? We are looking at an explosion right now into the daylight of corruption from the DOJ, from the FBI, from the NSA, from the last presidential administration, and I could keep going, from Congress, both the House and the Senate. And this is exploding right now. This is probably one of the most entertaining times to be alive in America that I can possibly remember. It is highly entertaining. It is very interesting. I'm not saying it's fun, and I'm not saying that we're all going to come out with, on the high end of the stick on this. But we are looking at right now, okay, an explosion of catastrophe in all directions from our governance. How do you see this coming to fruition in the very near future, because my concepts are well known. I've probably written a dozen articles on this, but my audience, Rebecca's audience, would like to know, where do you think this is going to end up? Because right now we're almost at the crescendo, almost.
Right now, for this year, which is what we're focused on, you are going to see stressors in every aspect of the system, and you are going to see them test, and most of them are going to fail, beginning with the economic system. We've been on the steady creep for a long time. It's not sustainable. The Federal Reserve has put us into a hyperinflation cycle that is not going to come to fruition until probably 2022. The fact of the matter is, right now, they can't finance the government. They're kicking the can down the road. There's no can, there's no road. They're just kicking. In terms of challenge to power, expect Donald Trump this year to face crisis upon crisis. He's going to have crisis points arising. He's going to have to make horrible decisions.
Yes.
Not even of his own choosing, but because of what will be
Necessity.
perpetrated on him.
Yes.
So I would expect that by the end of this year, the beginning of next year, this administration will look the landscape's going to be very different. And it's going to be different on both sides, because these guys like to take each other out. And that's what you're going to begin to see as the night of the long knives inside the government. And by the way, just as a footnote to all this, in California last week, a governor, a doctor was given a 145-year sentence, conviction, after he was convicted of sexual assault on the U.S. gymnastics, the American gymnastics participants. That was a show trial with a political activist judge who used him to basically hang in effigy all of the pedophiles and perverts sitting in Washington, D.C. and in the corridors of power around the world. He deserved the sentence. He did not deserve to have the sins of all these politicos who have been trafficking children for decades hung on him.
Randy, that is actually part 3 with you, Rebecca, and I. We are going to go into this. It's something that absolutely needs to be discussed. It's vital. And that programmed ignorance is so deep, it's insane.
Yeah.
We need to crack that shell. We do. All right, look, I enjoy this so much. The only down spot on any one of these shows is that the show is only an hour long. I really wish that you and I could do what we used to do, combine a couple of shows and end up by talking for 2 or 3 hours, and we still didn't get through everything we wanted to talk about. But part 3, everybody watching, there will be a part 3, and Pedogate and Pizzagate will be discussed part 3. But Randy, it is always an extreme pleasure to have you here, because you're one of those people that doesn't go, woo, every time you hear something that an SJW would be triggered at. You know what you're talking about. You are a person who has shed the programmed ignorance a long time ago. Rebecca, I couldn't even imagine doing a show without you. You are a dynamic part of this show. And besides that, you've got the best backdrop of all of us.
I know.
So any closing statements here, Rebecca?
I just think what Randy said, if I were to take one concept from this entire show, is that each of us is accountable here to make changes. And that means getting involved locally. If you're going to speak out, be educated about it, know what's going on, and offer solutions so that those out there who aren't can start seeing different ways to generate a positive change. But really, the nation is made up of citizens, and every one of us is a part of it, and we all have a role to play, and we really can't complain if we're not taking part in it.
That's not only a vital, valid point, but everybody out there needs to understand something. I don't give a damn how much you like Trump or what, I don't know, what person you elect and put into the Oval Office. This system is so corrupt and so broken. Listen to me. It can never be changed from the top down. It's physically impossible. The only way to change this system is from the local community up. It
And so-
cannot happen any other way.
With that, this year is the year for massive local elections, statewide, countywide, so on and so forth. If you want change, this is the time to get involved. Find out who your local candidates are, see if they support what you believe in, and help them with their campaigns and get those people in the right places, because it's, like you said, going to move up, not down from there.
And Randy, your parting shot, my friend.
I'm sorry, you dropped out.
Your parting shot.
Keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, and begin to take responsibility for the things you see around you and do what you have to do to make it right.
Very
Yes.
good.
Very well said, Randy.
For everybody watching, this has been another episode of Eradicating Programmed Ignorance on TLBTV, and of course brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. We appreciate all of you. There will be a part 3, so please stay tuned, and we wish you all a very pleasant day.